So I just saw The Nun 2 in theaters, and these are just going to be my quick kind of right out of the theater reactions, not scripted, just my full review here, off the top of my head. So The Nun 2 is the newest film in this never-ending Conjuring universe. It was directed by Michael Chavez, who directed both La Llorona and also the third Conjuring movie, and he brings us now the sequel to The Nun, which came out a few years ago, a movie that I completely forgot happened, and now we have a sequel to that movie that I am also probably going to forget happened within, maybe 2 weeks. So what did I like about this movie? What are some pros? First off, I think it is a fine general audience horror movie. This is a movie that I think general audiences are probably going to get what they pay for. They're going to get a simple horror movie that has some effective jump scares, some effective, atmospheric scares, and a decent enough story that even the dumbest people alive can follow it. So it's a movie that's definitely going to work for general audiences. My theater definitely worked for it. They were reacting, they were loud, they enjoyed it. I also think the performances here are actually pretty good. Taissa Farmiga specifically is really, really good here. I didn't really remember her performance in the first movie, but she is absolutely great in this. Despite the script not really giving them a lot to work with, it's not a terrible script, but it's just like as much of a cookie cutter script as you can expect. What else did I like? I mean, there were some scares that definitely kind of worked. There were some atmospheric things, some camera techniques that I really liked. I thought the opening of the film was probably the strongest part of the whole thing. There was some really great imagery. There were sequences that I thought were really well done, specifically the one with the magazines and everything, but all that stuff was in the trailer, so it kind of got ruined for me and it didn't work as well in the movie. Some of the scare setups, although very, cliched and things that we've seen done a million times, were effective enough, I guess. And of course, the design of the Nun is really great. The Nun has been great in every single movie that she's been in, just the overall design of that character. It looks great, and it's always pretty freaky when she's on screen. So what didn't I like about this movie? And man, do I have a bunch of cons. First off, this is as cookie cutter as it gets. There is absolutely nothing about this movie that stands to be unique whatsoever. It is as generic a horror movie as we have gotten in a long time, even more generic than I think the newest Insidious movie. I feel like James Wan kind of created this mold of horror movies with Insidious and the original Conjuring movies, this mold of how to make a really, really effective and terrifying horror movie. And those movies were great, and he did an excellent job with those, but I just feel like these studios have been just kind of replicating what he did there and making the same movie over and over and over and over and over, and it just hasn't worked as well without his unique touch on them. This film just kind of felt soulless. It felt like it didn't have a vision. It felt like it was made in a factory, kind of like the modern day MCU, and that's what I kind of feel like this Conjuring universe has been. It's sort of been like the MCU of the horror genre, just kind of making these films kind of like on a factory line, just over and over and over, and every now and then you get something that's really great, and you get a young director who just happens to make something really unique and special, but for the most part you just keep getting these remade movies that by themselves are fine. I mean, they're not terrible films. This movie is not terrible by any means. It's not unwatchable, but they just do not offer anything new or unique to the medium. They're just there to please general audiences and make Warner Brothers a little bit of money, and to that I say good job, because, it's gonna make money, and Warner Brothers is gonna see this as a successful movie and keep making more of them. But to me, somebody who goes to the movie theaters for the art form, somebody who loves movies, and somebody who watches hundreds of movies every single year, I'm just kind of looking for this new edge of horror movies, and we've kind of seen some unique stuff. With the emergence of directors like Robert Eggers and Ari Aster, we've had some really unique horror movies. I also really like Talk to Me. I thought that was a unique flavor. Also, Oppenheimer, one of the greatest horror movies ever. That movie's fucking terrifying. But overall, this film just does not add anything unique. It's also incredibly predictable, which I guess horror movies today, most of them are predictable. I'm not sure I also really enjoyed the fact that this was a direct sequel. Like, something that the Conjuring universe has done with some of its other sequels, specifically the Annabelle movies, is that each new Annabelle movie is a new story with a new cast of characters, so you don't have to remember the very unmemorable film that came before it. And I kind of wish they did that with this, because there were parts of this movie where I was like, oh yeah, they were from the last one. And I just did not remember the first Nun movie whatsoever. I also just think this universe is kind of a mess, and I know they're probably at the point where they're not really trying to tell a coherent story here through all of these films. But something about watching the Nun, do all these terrible things and watching them battle the Nun, just knowing where that story ends up in The Conjuring 2, just makes this less fun to watch. It makes the stakes feel kind of meaningless. I also feel like something that really worked about some of the other Conjuring movies, specifically a couple of the Annabelle movies and the original two Conjuring movies, is the fact that those were loosely based on true stories and really tried grounding themselves in reality and telling a story that made you feel like it was actually in our world, because maybe it was. We don't know. I can't tell you if the Warrens were, telling the truth or just full of shit, but whether they were or not, the fact that they were real people that existed and some of these stories were real real stories allowed for those movies to really have a true sense of terror and horror. And with these films, because, you know, The Nun is not exactly based on anything real, it's just not as easy to connect to the real horrors of it. There's no sense of groundedness, and it just feels like a cartoonish horror movie. One thing I will say I liked about it, I forgot to mention in my pros, is the fact that this movie is kind of like a treasure hunt movie at one point, and it got me really thinking. We should really make, somebody out there should really make a National Treasure-esque horror movie. Let's make a Indiana Jones meets National Treasure hunt horror movie. That is a phenomenal idea. We can even get Nicolas Cage in a National Treasure horror movie, except take out the horror and let's just make National Treasure 3. Jesus Christ, Disney, how have you not made National Treasure 3? What is wrong with you?
Give me what I want!
But yeah, overall, I was not the biggest fan of The Nun 2. It's definitely watchable. If you like these kinds of generic horror movies, I'm sure you'll have a great time with The Nun 2. If you're going out with a group of friends looking for a movie, go ahead and watch this. You'll probably have fun. Is it anything special? Is it anything unique? Is it anything that'll really blow up this genre? No, not really. Is it allowing me to make this video to pump out more content as well as make a Conjuring ranked video in the next coming days? Yes, it is, so thank you for that. But overall, it's probably like a 2.5 out of 5. You know, it's not terrible, so I can't give it anything lower than that, but it's definitely not anything that I'm gonna remember past, like, tomorrow. So yeah, have you guys seen The Nun? If you have, let me know what you thought of it down below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe for more. Make sure to turn on notifications to see everything as I post them. And I will see you guys in the next video.